It's movie time, and we're back again with movie time. Hey, everybody, how are you doing? I hope that you had a fabulous couple of days, and welcome to our Friday movie time. It's like we are here tonight with an incredible guest, and we will at first also, of course, we have our co-hosts. Olaf, how you doing, Olaf?
I am doing fantastic. It has been just such a lovely day in the great state of Indiana. I got out for a little bit this morning and decided when the thermometer hit 100, it was time for me to go inside and stay. And that's where I've been most of the day.
Excellent. And we also have our co-host Richard, Arpo. Arpo, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for saying the magic word, Arpo, so I could come to life once again and have another great show. We have had thunderstorms here all day. Well, we were talking on the phone earlier. You probably heard all the rumbling in the background. It sounded like somebody was moving furniture down the hallway. No, that was the thunder.
I thought you were just hungry.
Oh,
Well, there was that too, yes.
yes. And also with us tonight is our amazing guest, Mr. Ben Yennie. Hey, Ben, how you doing?
Hello, I'm great. Thank you guys for having me on.
Thank you for being on. It's like it's so exciting. It's like so finally, after all of these years, we finally get together.
This is true.
Yes, reunited, and it feels good.
It feels so good.
You do know
Yes.
your husband's in the same room with you, right, Grayson?
No.
We might want to cool that.
Yeah, it's he's just kidding. It's like so. Also, so tell us about yourself, Ben, and how did we get here?
So I am a lot of things. The kind of vague way to put it is that I'm an entrepreneur working in the film and technology space.
Mm-hmm.
The more specific way to put that is I'm an author, producer's rep, and co-founder of a technology startup that focuses on the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, as in yesterday, I also released the first part of a report on the film industry meant to illuminate some questions that are very basic, but for some reason none of us have ever answered before.
Wow.
Things like how many films are made in a year, or how big is the independent film industry in terms of monetary spend?
Wow.
How many filmmakers are there in the US? Things like that. And that dropped on the PrdouctionNext blog yesterday.
Nice.
So,
Wow, great.
I cannot wait to catch up on that one too, because it's like I really do like your blog. I was like going, wow, oh my gosh, wow.
well, yeah, I'm glad that you find the blog helpful. I think a lot of people are.
Yes.
More recently.
It's like it's so important to see these things. It's like understanding the information. It's like how the filmmaking population. It's like, for example, you also had the article of 7 valuable resources filmmakers already have. Things like 11 rules of fantastic production assistance on set. It's like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's highly recommended to some other people too, in regards to that. It's like 5 unorthodox but necessary producing skills. So it's like these articles are amazing, and they're very informative, and they really do help with a lot of it for audience members to have. Now, let's also talk about a little bit of your history. It's like, so tell us a little bit about Guerrilla Rep Media. How did Guerrilla Rep Media get its roots and going?
Okay. So Guerrilla Rep Media is what I ended up calling my company after I released a book of a similar name, which is just The Guerrilla Rep American Film Market Distribution Success on No Budget. The way the name came to be is that I was at AFM, and I was my first AFM as a producer's rep instead of a producer. And I sat down next to kind of an AFM old timer who asked, "What are you?" And I said, it's still the first day, so I wasn't sure what my pitch was this year. So I said, "I'm a Guerrilla Rep." And he said, that's good. I can make money with that. And then I said, I'm going to do it first. And then I published a book. But so that is that. And then in terms of actually being a producer's representative and the services I provide, I started going to AFM, I think in 2010, the first year I moved to San Francisco.
Yep.
And after a couple of years of going there, I realized that I had a lot of knowledge and contacts that most filmmakers didn't, and it would be much better to build a company as a producer's rep than a producer, just because there are a lot more filmmakers who need help with distribution. There's a lot greater need for filmmakers who need than there is for more films being made. So I could fit that niche, and I became a honest producer's rep, of which there are not many. So, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about is for the audience members, and Olaf will agree with this one too, what a producer's rep does as opposed to a sales agent.
Okay. A producer's rep is somebody who will act as a liaison between the sales agent and the filmmaker. And there are some people who argue that you don't need one, and honestly, you don't need a bad one. But a good one can save you a lot of money. And what I do specifically, because there's a lot of variance in the term, what I do is I will act as a sales agent in the domestically in North America, and then I will work with a network of trusted sales agents for the other parts of the world. A lot of times I do just give it to one sales agent who I know does well with this type of film. So it doesn't get too segmented. But since I'm not every producer's rep is good at that, but I'm direct with some companies whose names I don't want to say, but publicly, but some pretty reputable companies that even some sales agents aren't direct with in the US. So
yes.
Yeah.
Well, which makes absolute sense. And so let's talk a little bit about sales projections and cue point values, because that's something that a lot of people don't understand, that the sales rep also helps out with the sales projections and cue points. How does let's talk a little bit about bankability in that cue point rating of how you get your sales projection figures. What's now considered bankable to you in this day and age?
To me?
Yes.
Bankable is something with a film being directed by somebody who has made at least 3 films, if we're talking about the projection stage.
Yes.
And then the talent depends on what genre you're in and where specifically you want to be selling it to. But it has to be something that's not execution dependent, which means that The Expendables is not execution dependent. Fruitvale Station is.
Yes.
Generally, we're talking something like an action movie or a thriller with a director with a proven track record and some recognizable stars. Now, what stars will actually sell market, and there are at least 3 major markets every year. And there are also about a total of around 20 or so, depending on how you count it. But the only way to actually to get the cast you need that has the best chance of selling internationally, the best way to do it is to talk to an international sales agent, because they live and breathe this stuff. Their businesses are all about knowing what they can sell. So if you develop a relationship with those sales agents, then they might help you know who to go after.
Well, which makes a lot of sense.
And regarding the sales projections, if you want to make, if you want to look at sales comparables from other movies, it's something you can do, but it's really more of an intellectual exercise than anything that will help you to any great degree. The best thing you can do to have the best chance at having realistic sales estimates is to talk to a sales agent and have them do up a sales sheet for you. And they'll only do that if you are on good terms with them and they've given you an LOI already.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big difference between getting sales projections and getting a pre-sale.
Yes.
The sales projections are much easier, and they mean more than the comparables you could do yourself or hire other people to do, but they are still far from ironclad. So,
Because it varies market to market.
Exactly.
And of course, it also depends on the ebb and flow of popularity of that particular genre at that time.
And the particular assets you have for your film. And it's not just genre, but actors go in and out of fashion as well.
Yes.
So, now I don't want to say any names because I'd get in trouble, but there are some actors who you think would be very, very bankable that I've represented movies that had them in before, and then they just did too many movies that year or the last couple of years, and they were no longer bankable because they did a lot of schlock in those movies.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that you would think would be good that actually hurt you more than help you. So
that you actually take the mulligan.
And not, yeah.
When you're working with somebody and you have one of these, maybe the actor that's not as bankable as what the producer thinks, do you tell them that, or do you just suggest maybe they might want to look for somebody else, or do you not do that? Is that kind of like, we'll leave that alone, or what do you do with that?
There have been specific times when a film has been completed that I have turned them down because of an actor they had in it, because it would make it impossible to sell, because even if it was good, people would assume it was bad because of this one particular actor.
Okay.
So there are so if they're a more in development client, I will definitely tell them, because it doesn't do me any good to have them.
Yeah.
Some of these people charge 10 grand a day.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually hurt your chances at saleability. They hurt your international sales price. Don't help it. So there's really not much of a reason to have them.
And by the same token, also there are actors that aren't very bankable here in the U.S., but in some place like China or France, they're like huge assets to your film.
There's a lot of wrestlers that are like that. It's surprising that professional wrestling, some of those actors are actually very bankable overseas, and ones you might not expect. I heard a story that this was back in the 90s that somebody wanted, I don't remember who it was. I want to say it was Rowdy Roddy Piper, but it wasn't even somebody that notable in the wrestling community. Yeah. And because they were able to get this guy who was really easy to get and pretty affordable, they ended up selling, I think it was Germany. And
wow.
So, and that was a pre-sale at that time. So that was very nice. Yeah. You hear behind closed doors when the booze gets taken out at AFM after you.
I love those parties. Thank you.
Yeah, but
so in other words, sometimes it might be a good idea if you're going to market the film overseas or internationally, to look and see what wrestler is really bankable and work them into the movie somehow.
It might not be a bad idea, but one of the best measures that you can get as easily as any sales agent or anyone is their social media presence.
Yes.
I'd say if you want to be looking forward, which you should be, because your film won't be out for 2 years until after you start shooting, would be look at their Snapchat presence.
Okay.
I have said some completely wrong things about Snapchat. I thought it was kind of a flash in the pan, and I was wrong. but it is very much around, and it is only growing. So Snapchat and Instagram are probably the two biggest for you to be looking at. They're also ones that I personally have zero presence on because I don't know how to use them properly yet. So
I'm still learning how to Twitter, if that helps.
I think I've figured that one out.
No, yeah, I'm still like, how do you tweet? What do you say? When is too many characters?
No, since you kind of brought up the social media, in other words, with Twitter, as far as like Twitter and Facebook, with like, see, when you're looking at different actors, is you say Snapchat is the big one. If they have a good Snapchat presence, then that could be a good thing. What about Facebook and Twitter? If they're prominent on both of those, does that help or not really make much of a difference in your opinion?
Facebook and Twitter make a pretty big difference, and it also depends. If you're making a movie that's targeted at people over 30, Snapchat and Instagram mean less than they would if you're making a movie targeted at people under 25.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So that is but Twitter is the easiest one to get to easily measure social media following on, but Facebook, yeah. So if you're looking at an actor, Twitter is a very good metric. Facebook is slightly less, but still important, and go by the amount of likes their page has and how active they are on the page. But honestly, Twitter is, for this particular thing, Twitter is kind of more important. However, Facebook, for your own social media planning, Facebook is much more profitable, and it's a better place to spend time, and there's a better time spent on Facebook.
Okay.
So,
very cool.
Yeah.
And well, the good thing about Twitter too is that you can just go to the general website, and very often you'll find a list of who or what is trending at any particular point in time, which is a really nice barometer to be able to use.
Right.
Ben, I forgot to ask you also, what genres and budget ranges are your comfort zones from each one of the things that you do, from producers rep straight through for the finance, et cetera, with the marketing?
Okay. So films I'm selling, I'll sell anything I will work on anything I believe I can sell and I have a buyer for. I have worked on primarily under $300,000 movies, not exclusively. There's also a couple that are around $500,000 and one that's just over, actually a couple that are just over $1 million. So a lot of what I do is low budget, producers rep and distribution end. If I do when I'm talking more about the financing level, and I don't personally really finance movies. I do, however, I do co-run an angel investment group that specifically at cultural investments, not just movies, but also wineries, restaurateurs, breweries, and we're considering games. But but that's not my money I'm putting in. I act as an advisor and a gatekeeper for that. So there's a little bit of a difference between me directly financing it and my role there.
Yes.
So those ones, we've only done one event so far, and I was advising the people pitching to be under $500,000 in a raise, which is very different than the total budget of the film, because if you're doing this properly, you should be looking at multiple different ways to get money into the film.
Yes.
Be it tax incentives, debt both backed and unbacked and all of this, and some of the assets these people had, they should have been looking at ways to raise money other than equity, because equity, a rule of thumb for financing films in general, is you want as little equity as possible.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean no equity. That doesn't mean equity is bad. It just means try to get these other things that are less costly to you as a filmmaker first. So,
well, and there are advantages to having debt finance, because it's like once you've paid back the loan per se plus interest, it's like at that point in time that your filmmaker is a filmmaker, you have the creative controls on that, and then the financier doesn't necessarily get back end points.
that is, they shouldn't, if it's a debt-backed security, they shouldn't get
Yes.
back end points. But the biggest thing on that is you have to make sure you have a way to pay it back.
Yeah.
And so there is a greater risk for debt, but if you can focus on gap debt, or excuse me, not gap debt, I meant to say backed debt, as in it's money that you take out as a loan against a tax credit for the state's tax incentive, or a pre-sale if you can get it. They still exist, but they're hard. Or even a guarantee letter from a brand who's got a product placement contract with you. Now that's going to be a lot smaller money, but there are different ways to get money, and you shouldn't be solely chasing equity. I think I've kind of gone off the point of your question.
Well, no, actually, that is a very legitimate point of our, in the question as well, because it's like, how do you feel that the capital stack should be in terms of percentage?
I did actually write a blog on this for the Guerrilla Rep site that goes into a lot more detail than I'm going to be able to go in here, but it really depends on your situation. I think the traditional way of doing it is 5 different stacks, which of 20% each, which is rarely applicable. But that would be 20% gap debt, which you would get after you've completed principal photography, so you can get it in finishing funds. 10 to 20% grant money, if you can get them, grant money or product placement. Those two together might get to 20%. Then there is tax incentive, which should be about 20%. And then if you can get pre-sales of 20%, that's that would also be very helpful for you. And then the final, or if you can't, equity. And then the final piece would be, you're probably, in this day and age, you probably are going to have to put some skin in yourself in order to, and if you don't have the money to do skin yourself, then crowdfunding. And I believe that money you raised via crowdfunding should be counted as your skin in the game, if you can't. And I think there are a lot of investors who agree.
Well, because it's a lot of proof of concept as well, if you're able to crowdfund and be able to get people backing behind your film.
It's a proof of, yes, you're right. It's a proof of concept, and it's proof that you can hustle, which is going to be the biggest determining factor on whether or not you make money back. Because if you can't do some level of marketing yourself, then the film might be in for some trouble. So even if you can get traditional distribution, able to market it yourself to make some money back yourself. Because it is going to, if you do it right, it will also increase the saleability of the film overall. So, yeah.
It does make, that does make a lot of sense. And also, it's like as well, I noticed that you say that you also work in the not-for-profit field as well. How do you balance the not-for-profit with the for-profit as well?
The producer foundry, I think, is what you're talking about.
Correct.
Basically everything that was educational and class-based ran through producer foundry, and sometimes those students would take up consulting or representation agreements with me. and anything that was purely educational and primarily took place in a one-on-one or in a classroom environment. A lot of it was online, was run through Producer Foundry, and a lot of it that was one-on-one, actually developing your project on an individual basis, or actually doing connection or representation services or anything along those lines was done through my for-profit arm, which is my representation agency. Given my limitations on my own time and the fact that we lost some of our team at Producer Foundry because they went on to get at different places, I don't know how active Producer Foundry is going to be in the future, which is sad. There's only so much time I have in a day.
Yeah, and it's true. It's like it's also balancing between all of the companies as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's like with PrdouctionNext, it's like in regards to that, you're talking about the consulting services. Can you talk a little bit about PrdouctionNext as well?
PrdouctionNext isn't consulting services. The consulting services were through Guerrilla Rep Media.
Yes.
But just clarifying more.
Yes.
But PrdouctionNext is a new software platform, which is much more intuitive, cloud-based project management. It's the goal is to have one place where you can manage your entire production from everyone. The most recent release we did on it, we just completely reworked our permission system, which enables everyone. Like, our permission system is now, you can be an admin who can basically do anything. You can be a producer who can do anything that a producer should be able to do on set. Same for the director, or basically any position above the line or department head level has their own permission sets. And you can combine them in case somebody is both an AD and a UPM. And while there's a lot of overlap in the skills to begin with, the AD needs to dive down and do a lot more stuff on set, whereas the UPM needs to have a lot more access to the budget than the AD does. So we have different permissions on that, and the way it is built now is that you can be both the AD and the UPM if you need both of those things. Or and it would be the DP who has access to all the shots and the equipment list and all of that, and whereas but doesn't have anything to do with the budget. So it's those sorts of things that is fairly intuitive once you start to get into it, but since we are still in closed beta, I don't want to say too much more about the permission system than that.
Understandable.
But but overall, the goal is to have one place where every crew member can interact and collaborate and communicate. Like, I don't know, do you guys use Slack at all?
A little bit, yes.
Okay. We actually have bots that talk with Slack when tasks are done.
Okay.
So yeah. Yeah, I will offline. I'll send you guys invitation codes so you can just try it. But also, since we are still in closed beta, if you apply and use just say you heard about it on the Movietime podcast, I'll let the people who do the screening know and you might get moved up in our queue a little bit. So
that would be great. And it's like, are you eventually going to be looking at companies like DFCN to work along with as well? Because then that way it flows one into the other?
That we have been talking about that. Nothing is firmly on the development plan for that, though. But it is something that's getting kicked around with upper management.
Yes. Which is kind of fun. That's like, yeah, we love getting. It's like, you know what they say? We love getting in touch with upper management.
Yeah, it's still a fairly small enterprise, but it is starting to change, so that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of exciting because it's like eventually this is something that does have a very huge niche in it. It's like when you're on production, it's like being able to share that paperwork. I don't know how many times it's like people have lost the paperwork along the way, or it's like you know, they need an instantaneous thing to be able to give to the guarantors right away. Like, did we start on time? Was production done on time? Was the what are we looking at budgetary wise? How much of the spend has happened to how much do we have left? It's like it will definitely quicken the process.
So a lot of what you're talking about is something we handle through what we call an executive dashboard. Basically, it allows you to send it to anybody who would be considered an executive producer.
Yes.
And that would be have to send. It's really easy to fall out of contact with your investors, and investors hate that. But
then your guarantor shows up on set with mean face.
Exactly. So what this enables you to do is actually just send them a dashboard that automatically updates anything's done, that tells them what critical and important tasks are due in the next X period, as well as what shoots are upcoming, where the budget is, where it's being spent. Are you and we're going to be integrating things like, are you over, under? So how far along the shoot is itself, like, yeah. So it's and this is just something that you don't have to do for them. It just happens as a byproduct of you using the tools.
Nice.
So it's not any additional work for you. Yeah.
Which is great.
Wow. That is an incredible tool, especially if you're a starting filmmaker, if you're making your first foray into it. It's nice to have a tool that's going to help not only let your investors know how you are keeping on track, but also keeps you kind of on track too. So that's, it's very impressive.
Are you also going to have continuity tools? So then that way it's like you will be able to keep up with continuity as well?
We already have something on that.
Okay.
And it's, I don't want to say how we do it, because again, it's still closed. But yeah, I know. But but we do have tools that deal with that. So we're actually gearing up for some pretty major announcements soon, and that's all I can say.
That is fantastic.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
So is it also going to be a way to also be able to, because one of the things that a lot of people are missing or lacking also in that as well in the communications of paperwork is that I've noticed when it's like being on set and stuff, it's like in and out times for that, when we've had discussions of unions that have come aboard where it's like that they have talked about, it's like for example, I'll give the Canadian example. ACTRA, if 15 minutes late the paperwork came there, well, sometimes the paperwork can't be helped, and it's like automatically they're like, oh well, our actor said that it was 15 minutes late the paperwork for being here, or stuff like that, or they were in meal penalty when they actually were not in meal penalty. We were quite within the rules of the day. It's like, is that also taking in that gap as well? Because rather than keeping it, like, we'd be able to keep extras in and out times as well as also crews in and out times.
Right now we're that is something that we have talked about, but there's a lot of that becomes a very complex programming thing, and it's not just the programming level of it. There are other partnership levels that are things that we don't that we haven't, that are not currently on our development timeline, but they are things we have talked about.
So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is that's basically where that is. And I have to be a little out some of this than I'd like, but
okay.
it is a.
You'll
It's
get to come back
something
to us
that-
when it's actually launched.
Indeed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we had a chance to talk to Alfredo the year after DFCN was launched.
hmm
So
That's good. I think I did the first story on DFCN that ever was done. I wrote a piece on it for. I don't remember whether it was Hope for Film or CineSource, but he ever got. So every time I see him at AFM, he remembers me, and it's always great to see him. So yeah.
yeah, it's like he's a wonderful guy. He's a part of our podcast as well.
Cool.
Like I mentioned, it's like we did have a chance to talk with him as well, and he actually launched our projects at Cannes Film Festival for us, doing some announcements of the slate of that, which is cool.
Cool.
So, yeah, but that's for another time in another place that we will talk about that. And so it's like, but also you've also done things of working as as a producer's rep with packaging agents.
Yes.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about how the relationship is between a sales rep and packaging agent, and how does?
Sorry.
And have been.
I am a light packaging agent. A lot of it.
Yes.
I misunderstood the question.
No,
so
I
that
want
was
both.
yeah. Okay.
From you as a packaging agent and working with other packaging agents.
Okay. Directly worked with too many packaging agents. Generally, it's well enough within my skill set that if it's something that the client really wants, I give them a price sheet, and if they want it, they take it. Otherwise, I would give them a list of people to contact who generally charge more than I do. So
cool.
That's so I don't know if I have direct experience to answer your question on that level, but in regards to acting as a packaging agent, I happen to be a bit of a schmoozy person. And I know it's shocking, just terribly.
Oh no!
I know, but
smoozy person, that is surprising. Yes,
I know. It's not like I wrote a book on networking or anything, but
no.
And I get along pretty well with agents. The biggest thing is just getting a list of your top 5 people is the first step. And then if you can, you take and run that list by through a producer's rep or sales agent or both, and then see who's most marketable. And then they might make changes to that list. And then after that list, you just look up their IMDb and you call their agents. I have a couple of blogs on how to do this. And you can try it yourself, but it's really easy to deviate from the script or stutter and then have them say, oh yeah, we don't take unsolicited calls, click.
Yes.
So the biggest thing there is if you have someone like me who's a producer's rep who will actually make that call for you, I know what my name, I have 8 producer credits since 2014, and about half of those are executive producer credits. So generally agents will just talk to me. It's possible to do without that, but it's easier to do with it. And the biggest thing is just to not mince words. Just be very clear about what you want, who you want to talk to, and be polite but firm. And don't give up until. Don't call them every day. Be very. You have to stay in their minds, but not be annoying. And if you can pull that off, you'd be surprised at what you can get out of it.
Interesting.
Now,
yeah.
Curiosity, when you say like don't call them every day, but you want to stay, kind of in their radar a little bit. In other words, do you like call, and if you don't get them, you wait 2, 3, 4 days? Is there a certain amount of, is there a certain time that you say before you call back again?
What I've found to work, which is the absolute most you can do before you cross into that annoyance line, is Monday, Friday, Wednesday.
Okay.
Repeat. And you just have to be very careful. And if they say no, you walk away. You don't try to talk back. You don't try to convince them any further. If it's a no, it is a no.
Right.
They will avoid saying no until it is actually a no. But if you try to push past the no, you will just burn them, and you don't want to do that.
So that's one of those ones where they say no. You say, "Okay, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah.
Have a great one, and be done."
Exactly. And sometimes when they say no, they might actually the client you want. But these are agents who get paid a percentage, so they might try to sell you one of their other clients. That has happened to me on multiple occasions, and it's actually something that it has happened to me enough that it is part of my pricing plan now. But
yeah.
So yeah, that's the best thing you can do. And honestly, just be friendly, be very straight to business. Generally let them lead, because if they want to talk about the weather for 5 sentences first, talk about the weather for 5 sentences first. Just let them lead. Always let the other agent lead. And yeah. So
it does make a lot of sense, because it's like they are the person with the client, and also understanding what they want to have first. It's like one of the things that we've talked about in prior shows is understanding what somebody else wants before you talk about what you want. It's like understand.
That's very sound advice.
Yes.
Right. Because you need them a whole lot more than they need you. So you got to let them have their me time before you get your you time.
Yes. And you always want to leave them on a good note, because, even if they say no this time, 6 months from now, you got another project coming up. You want to be able to go back to them.
Exactly.
And, talk to them, and, because this time they may say yes.
Yeah. And it's really interesting, though, also hearing from yes, having a producer's rep does help you in that sense. It's like having the extra person that is a good buffer. What are some of the other ways that also a producer's rep helps to buffer for you as well?
So if I were a producer, I would not have the relationships with pay TV people that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I just wouldn't. I also wouldn't have the same relationship with DVD distributors, or even a couple of theatrical ones. All of this is born out of being a producer's rep. And because if I had approached them, they would not. If I had approached them as a producer, they wouldn't talk to me. They don't want to deal with producers. They want to deal with, they definitely don't want to deal with directors, but they want to deal with producers. They want to deal with sales agents and maybe producers reps. And you have to be good at your job to get their attention as a producer's rep.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the biggest things that a producer's rep can do for you. Buyers will talk to me.
Yeah.
Buyers won't talk to you much. So, they might. It depends. But generally at AFM, buyers aren't looking for press. They're looking for sales agents. I bet you'd make a lot of friends really fast.
Yes.
But but buyers, they don't care as much. They have their own outlets for that.
They even have their own little lounge.
It's nice. It's nice.
Yeah.
They let you. I've been an exhibitor the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And exhibitors get access to the buyer's lounge.
Yes.
It's not great for networking, but it is nice. It's nice to go and sit for a minute, but they're generally reviewing stuff they already have. They don't want to just talk to you. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the press people get their own little press room. The buyers get their own little.
I did not know there was a
Look it
press
up.
room.
There
Actually,
is.
okay.
Yeah,
Gosh, it's starting. All of a sudden, it's starting to feel like AFM is getting so segregated.
I know, right? It's like everybody gets their own room. It's
And
like,
none of you talk to each other.
well, no, we do in the elevator.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, that's when you get in trouble on the floor, they send you to your room, so they have to have a room to send you to.
Yeah, they don't like it when you hustle too hard on the floor. I've
Yeah.
No.
had some run-ins with AFM security about that. Before I was an exhibitor, and then now they don't really bother me. They just say, "Go back to your room."
Yep, and that's how we know each other from 2011.
Okay, that makes sense. That was a while ago.
It was. I told you that it's like
Yeah.
I was there 2011. I was also there 2014 as well.
Okay, cool. So 2014 was my first year as a producer's rep.
Yep.
No. 2014 was the first year that my book had come out.
Yes.
And then it was my second as a producer's rep. And then 2011 was my second overall.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I do really like it. It's great. I love AFM. And it's done a lot for my career. And I'm kind of looking forward to it again this year.
Oh yeah.
So.
And like I said, I was there also for 2007, otherwise known as the Dark Year in a lot of history. The Dark Year was when a lot of the British tax incentives, when they revamped the system and they pulled all the tax credits at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you watched everybody, like it just went really super dark in the room,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like you could hear a pin drop. It went from like blah, 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 all of a sudden was like, ah, and people watching the screen and going, oh no, what you know, like running to their phones, and it was like you could almost like I said, heard a pin drop, and that the stock market had crashed again.
Wow. So actually, even worse than what we found with our research with Canada, then, huh?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it's like it was one of those, you could, like I said, you could hear a pin drop the minute they were like, and we've pulled the tax credits. And all of these films that were counting on those tax credits suddenly had to find a new and exciting way to be able to film or to receive their tax credits. But out of it came a very beautiful system that they have now.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Out of the darkness came this beautiful flower of British tax credit system, the way that they have it now, and about qualifying and quantifying in terms of production. So it's like, I don't think that they're going to, it's like, because they divided it out into two different flows, and it was quite the bit of difference that they made, but it actually now works for the filmmakers a lot better in terms of that. But we don't know what's going to happen with Brexit. Do you know what's going to happen with Brexit?
I don't know what's going to happen with Brexit. I don't think it will impact. No, actually, it might impact international sales. I don't know. I probably shouldn't talk about it because I have no idea, and anything I would say would be rampant speculation.
Well, it's like we don't ever plan a North American Brexit, thankfully.
Yes.
Let's hope. But
yes.
Yeah, there was talk a few years ago now about about strengthening the EU's trade system and making the EU basically trade as one country, and that would have destroyed the film system, the current international sales system.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not going to say panic about that when that was going on, but it was only maybe 2 steps removed from panic.
Yes.
So it was so in that vein, the stronger the stronger and independent UK may not be the worst thing specifically for film, but I'm pretty sure there are some not great tariffs that will result from it.
Yes.
So yeah, again, like I said, I really don't know much about this. Anything I'm saying is rampant speculation, but it's what it's the best guess I'd have at this point.
And it does make a lot of sense, because it's like, it can be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
At this point in time, we don't even know if it's going to happen or not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond a yes vote, we have really no clues of what's going on with that.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that, because you have been in the industry now for even all of this while, it's like, what have you seen as like the biggest revolutions that have happened and evolutions that have also happened in this industry?
I think we're going to be moving, so the biggest change, and this honestly predates my time, but I've had lots of those conversations with drinks after the close of the market behind
Yes.
closed doors, so I can tell this story from one of those, which is the biggest thing that's changed about the international sales market is DVD. And DVD has died. People were hoping Blu-ray would pick it up, but it just didn't. And DVD is probably going to kill horror at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Because the reason DVD horror was such a safe bet was that it was an impulse buy at wherever you were, Walgreens, just pick up a horror DVD on your way home so you had something to watch that night.
Yes.
But so now the bottom has fallen out. DVD is not dead, but it is dying. It will not be around for much longer. I'm just hoping I can get one wide DVD before then, which, spoilers.
Yes.
But
Hey, I still own a VCR.
I do too. I'm looking at it right now. But but yeah, so that's my so the biggest change has been DVD, and when DVD fell out, all of the huge revenue fell out. The way AFM came to be, and the way even the con film market grew, was VHS.
Yes.
And if you had, when so many people had VHS and everybody was starved for content and there just wasn't enough out there, VHS was basically like being able to print money.
Yeah.
And then DVD came in and took over.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of that, DVD even grew the market because you could make the discs for so cheap that right around the same time DVD started to exist, a lot of films just entered the public domain. So you could print free movies, sell them wide, and companies that started out of that. I know the Weinsteins did it for a little bit. I don't know if they actually started. No, they didn't start in that. But so then once that changed, once that ceased to be, nothing stood up to take its place. And nobody's paying the same money for PPVOD or TVOD, excuse me. I don't know why I call it PPVOD, but it's the same thing. Transactional video on demand or pay-per video on demand. And not as much given how much content is on the SVOD, subscription video on demand. Platforms like Netflix or Amazon Prime or anyone, and it's just not in the money that these people are paying in licenses is paltry compared to what DVD could do for you. Amazon's deal is much better. If you're this podcast is primarily for filmmakers, not creators.
Correct.
Or not viewers, but so filmmakers, Amazon pays you best. And you get paid per view. You get paid, I forget exactly what it is, but you get paid a royalty for every either 7 or 10 minutes you watch. I can never remember whether it's 7 cents for every 10 minutes or 10 cents for every 7 minutes. But It's something along those lines. So you driving views to it actually increases your paycheck every month. And I know 7 cents for 10 minutes doesn't sound like a lot. It adds up very quickly. So if you drive views anywhere, drive them to Amazon. And if you have to self-distribute, after you've had a window of transactional VOD through VHS or VHX or whatever, putting it on Amazon is one of the best ways for you to satisfy your customer base and make money while doing it. So that is my biggest thing that's changed is the internet. And I think a result of the internet is that filmmakers are going to have to rely increasingly on their own hustle and their own marketing chops to make any reasonable amount of money in this. And I think that it will create a new class of producer, which is producers of marketing and distribution, that will rise up to help to fill the needs of these growing productions and the growing needs of marketing and distribution in this ever-changing landscape.
So you don't. So one of the questions that I would probably question is, after all of these years, there are now certain artists who are putting out their work again back on vinyl because they realize that there's an audience for that. Who, after all of these years, it's like there are people buying record players again because they just want that vinyl feel. Do you think that we're ever going to go back to a classic feel for film? A nostalgic classic something?
I think the closest we'd get, I don't think there would be any wide-scale adoption of it. Part of the thing on vinyl is vinyl actually does sound better still.
Yes.
Whereas optical media, Blu-ray is about the best you can see, period. There isn't, I mean, if you looked at the analogs there's VHS is a cassette tape, essentially. Yes. DVD is a CD, and Blu-ray is, I don't know. But if you want to get to something that would have the same retro feel, you'd actually have to be looking at film, an actual like 35 or 16 millimeter film prints, and I do not see that happening given how difficult they are to operate. Even if you don't, there's no skill in operating a record player. You just put it on and you have to make sure you take care of it. I don't think there's anything that could emerge. However, I think there is room in the art house world to have more theaters like the Castro here in San Francisco, or other sorts of theaters that play curated selections of older movies on as an alternative to going down to the multiplex. So I think that's probably the closest that could happen. Drive-thrus actually in smaller venues might even be a decent way to do that, although I hate watching movies at the drive-thru. Those movies at drive-thru. But it's more that every time I go, there are always people turning on their lights and blacking out the screen and just...
Yeah.
You just need to come up here to Indiana to my drive-in, because you don't really have that problem that often.
Okay, well that's good to hear. I mean, the last time I went, I was really soured on the whole experience. But yeah.
I have to admit, though, that I do like the way that these new Alamo Victory theaters are going, and theaters of that like, and like Silverlight, where they're actually putting a dinner with the movie. I do actually like this trend. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think theaters are going to have to be more of a destination than they are. This is not, if you read up on this at all, this is not an unpopular opinion. But I think there's also there was talk of 4D for a while, and like Rogue One was going to be a 4D release, which meant that if you've ever been to any like a theme park, yes, a theme park where the seats move, that in basically in regular theaters for movies like Star Wars. And I'll be honest, I would totally see Rogue One if my seat was moving. That would be awesome.
Except my drink would spill.
I don't think they move that. but just good cup holders. But yeah.
Yes.
No, what they do is they give you a sippy cup so that you don't spill your drink. They'll make large sippy cups.
Now, I also read recently where Lauren Selig is looking for her next film to trying to look into virtual reality as as a film genre. Is this something that you see as possibly the next step, the next evolution?
Sure. If you'd asked me 6 months ago, I would say yes, but now I'm not so sure. Facebook had an entire film studio for Oculus Rift that was closed without warning. And I worry if Facebook's pulling out of the content creation game this early, I worry a little bit about the future for it. Because the biggest problem with adoption for virtual reality right now is that there isn't quality content. Enough quality content to really drive adoption, to drive people into buying devices. And I think it's not, and I think Oculus pulled out too early if their goal was to get people to actually have the content in order to adopt these devices. I think they pulled out too early, and to me that says that they don't see a future in the technology, and they own one of the biggest devices for it. So I worry about it. I don't think it's out yet. I'm just less certain of it than I used to be. And
if you,
I would go ahead.
Yeah,
I was just going to say that what would you feel as the next evolution for movies, because they have to keep evolving, for the movie theaters to survive. It's getting harder and harder. I know. I mean, I have a couple of friends who own movie theaters, and I know it's getting harder and harder to get that audience to come in. So, what do you see as the next possible evolution in film?
Honestly, I think it's going more and more episodic. I think that a lot of what Steven Spielberg said about a Hollywood implosion about 5 to 7 years ago may end up being prophetic. I think if your friend owns an independent movie theater, I think they'd be better off focusing on second and third run and classic movies to cultivate a community behind their theater, less as the more current releases and more as these are amazing movies, and just having a really good programmer, at least as some of their showings. The problem is you have to have people who really know their movies. Like the Castro, I absolutely love the Castro Theater here in San Francisco. They very rarely play new movies. Almost every night is a classic double feature. One of the favorites that I've been to was a double feature of Lost Highways and Videodrome, which
nice.
it was amazing.
Right.
But yeah. So that's kind of, I really like their model, and I think that's why this classic picture palace has been able to survive in the Castro in San Francisco, which is a hugely expensive area, and it's not a small building. I'm sure they own it, but the real estate for that would be huge. But they still keep it and they still open every night doing a very good mix of movies for people who love movies. And I think those are the sorts of people who will continue to go to the theater. And they're cheaper to show too.
Right. Now, one of the things I've seen, or I know of in somewhere around Nashville, a theater, they're doing a thing, but they're doing as a drive-in theater. But it's what they're doing is they're building an enclosed theater that has like cars in it. You don't actually drive your own car in. You go in and you sit in a car, or they've got picnic areas or whatever. So I think some of the theaters are trying to, you know, get some of the nostalgia going by like a drive-in, but it's not a real drive-in. It could be raining, pouring, doesn't matter because you're inside of a building.
I haven't heard of that, but that sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's in Nashville. I think it's if I remember right, it was like Blue Moon Blue Moon drive-in, but I think it's supposed to be up and running by next year.
Cool. That sounds, yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to check that out. It's gonna be interesting to see how that goes, and I think that would be drive-ins in general are a very limited thing just because of the amount of real estate they take up and the limited screens you'd get, and hours. But if you're doing an enclosed building, yeah, I'm curious about that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, the one here locally for me is they show he has 2 screens, and he shows 2 different movies on each screen. So, and it's $11, and that's for both movies.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Is that per person or per car?
Per person.
Cool.
But I mean, here you can't. In other words, local. I mean, if I go to the indoor theater, it's going to cost me $10, $8 to $12 depending on the movie, and that's just one person. And then when you go to the concession stand, you're going to pay like $6 or $7 for a large drink, or a medium. A medium drink and a small popcorn cost you like $11. It's like I can go to the drive-in for about $8 and get 2 hamburgers, fries, and a large drink.
Yeah, there's a pretty clear win.
Yes.
The Castro is actually also similar. It's, again, those double features are $11.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
They're not current movies,
That's nice.
but $11. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And that's in San Francisco. And for reference, the movie theater downtown here is not for IMAX, not for anything like that, just for regular price ticket that's non-matinee. It's, I think, 15 or 17.
Right.
For a single adult ticket. And matinee stops at noon.
Nice.
Yeah, and just a couple of years ago, he went digital here. So, but even before he went digital, he was still getting whatever the current movie was. He gets them. So,
cool.
And that's unusual for a drive-in. They don't usually like to they don't want to put the drive-ins with the current movies because they can't bring in as many people for each showing.
Makes sense.
All I can say is if I lived in San Francisco, I'd probably be going to the Castro every night.
Yeah.
Yes.
The others here know I have a great love of the old classic movies.
Mm-hmm.
And most of what comes out today pales by comparison with a Casablanca or an On the Waterfront.
Yeah. Which also brings us to an interesting topic. It's like one of the things that we were talking about as our theme over the month is diversity in filmmaking. How do you feel that the market is opening up to diversity in terms of that? Or because now that with the boosting forward of more female filmmakers, more diverse subjects, more diversity in characters, how do you feel that that's going to change the trends in the industry?
I haven't thought of it through that lens. I can say that part 3 of the report, of the 7-part report I was talking about, is all about the gender in the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you that the numbers are about as bad as you think they are. So 2 weeks. But but in regards to your actual question,
yes,
I hope it changes. I think that there's enough evidence backing up that more diverse films make more money, and that it should change, and that there's plenty of reason for it to change, apart from the fact that it just should freaking change. But I don't know if it's going to as quickly as it should. The film industry is one of the most conservative industries on earth in terms of how it reacts to change. And it does, and the answer is a lot of times it doesn't, not as quickly as it should. Which is very frustrating, especially given how socially liberal the film industry is. But I think there's every reason for it to, but I worry that the people in power right now don't want it to. And I think that there's such a structure around them that it's going to take.
Yes.
Hopefully it doesn't take the industry falling apart for it to change, but there has to be enough to get rid of the old guard and bring in a new one. And that is upheaval, which we're about at, so maybe.
Yes. Because people are starting to say, look, we want more diverse stories. We don't want the same thing regurgitated over and over again to us.
We'll see the Marvel movies.
Yes.
The only way this is going to change is if people put their money where their mouth is and stop seeing the movies. And that will get the studios to pay attention. You need to vote with your ticket dollar. Back your stuff up. Wonder Woman almost didn't happen. Even though it was made. I don't know if you were following any of this.
Yes.
But they were refusing to promote it, and they were calling it a flop before anything actually happened from it. And then it was a huge box office success, and nobody wanted to believe it because they all think women can't be superheroes, which is baloney. But I think it's going to take. I think Wonder Woman was a good step, but I think Captain America needs to fail to succeed for people to actually pay attention. I don't know if that's going to happen right now. So, big movies that Hollywood keeps making that are just bad, and they're failing at the box office as a result of it. I think something more drastic needs to happen for it to really change.
Well, it's like they're also looking at it from the point of view of this is also giving a female filmmaker a larger budget to work with as well, because it's been always why do you need 2-3 million? Can you show us why you need 25-30 million? It's the way that the metric is changed. It's like now this may open to a different metric, but also it's like diverse stories do need to be told.
Yeah, they do.
Because we answer in our box office dollars as well by watching movies that it's like if they're regurgitating the same old thing, at one point in time we're going, okay, enough is enough. Like they were talking about the sagging summer box office dollars. Except for Wonder Woman, a lot of them, it's like the sequels to all of these things put out disappointing performances.
Yeah, I worry that the powers that be will misinterpret what that means and find some reason that it's not diverse storytelling, or people aren't getting tired of sequels, or because I don't know. Yeah.
Or trequels in some cases, because it's like at one point in time you're sitting there going like, good God, why? It's like I don't want to see the 8th, version of, some Marvel thing. It's like I'm not. It's like the only reason that would possibly get me to the box office to go see the new Spider-Man movie would be because of Michael Keaton being in it.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, it's like I sit there and go, great, we've been there, did that, bought the t-shirt before.
Mm-hmm. So I think it is starting to change.
Yes.
And so you were.
No, okay. Go on.
I think you were. I think it is starting to change, and I think one of the biggest indicators of this happened this week with the female Doctor Who.
Yes.
I think there was also talk of a female James Bond, which I don't think, or a Jane Bond, I suppose, but and I don't know where that is. I haven't kept up on that one, but I think there are a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of potential in there, but yeah. Sorry. Was someone else trying to say something?
I was just going to tell Grayson to stop picking on my Marvel. I've been a fan of Marvel since I could read a comic book.
Okay.
Yes, and it's also but this is coming into then hopefully we will be turning back towards also a lot more intellectual subjects, because it's like in that sense. We were talking also in this month of why there isn't movies like Another Children of a Lesser God, why there isn't deeper subjects. It's like maybe it might start doing that, using the diversity, go back into deeper subjects.
I think that's a different problem. That's called the language barrier.
Yeah.
And I think given how, I don't know if we're going to get into deeper movies anytime soon, at least not on a wide scale. I think there's a lot of stuff that you can find deeper content on for television, but I think a lot of that's going to shift towards television. And because the theatrical model relies on something, and if you're translating something from English to Chinese, you are going to lose a lot in the translation, so sometimes you need to dumb it down. That's a harsh way to say it, but Transformers proves me correct. So I worry that's a big part of the problem. And given the current business model, I don't know if there's a way around it, other than to look at different media, like television.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So it's like there is a possible rise of that, and also in the television market of bringing in more, I'll say, more subject-based film and deeper content. Does it also change the globalization of it? Because with the audience evolving with the type of films that go, it's like it also goes with, between country to country to country, what works for people and their tastes for box office. It's like, do you feel that there's any changes coming from the audience in demands of what's being put out there for filmmakers?
If you continue to make, I think there's more difference across national borders than we like to think there is as a people.
Mm-hmm.
And I worry that any deep dive into something just isn't going to export well. So I think as long as the remains where it is, and as long as globalization is the primary concern, studio feature films, we're going to be relegated to things like comic book movies. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I mean, I would take just going back to an old style Michael Bay movie like The Rock, as opposed to the current Michael Bay movie like Transformers. But I mean, I would actually be excited to go back to the 80s and 90s action movies. They have a massive soft spot in my heart. They are. I think it's going to be difficult for even those to get made now, and that very silly to me. But yeah.
Well, it's a really difficult road to hoe on that one, to realize that, we may be relegated down to very superficial content at one point in time. I'd hope that turns around really quick.
I think it is turning. There is still a place to get good, thought-provoking content, even if it isn't the theater. And I think there is a lot of very good stuff happening in television right now. I wish there was a more communal way for that to happen at an in-person thing, as opposed to internet message boards.
True.
That's really all I can think on that, and I think foreseeable future, so long as the model relies on heavy globalization, we're not going to get very deep content in theaters, unless their model is different.
Very true. It's like, so I had an interesting question though for you. You said that you had written a book because that was like, I'm going to beat you to it. It's like, so tell us a little bit about the book itself as well.
Okay. I actually have two. One is a collection of articles, a lot of which you can find for free online, but if you want to, this book was written more as a way to give a gift to someone, and it's very inexpensive as such.
Yes.
But so a lot of the articles that are on my site and Producer Foundry are in that book. And there are a couple that are unreleased, but most of them you can find online. But my main book is called, again, The Guerrilla Rep American Distribution Success on No Budget, and it is to working the American film market as well, and it's very useful for taking over to other film markets too. It's about what they are. It explains about how to actually use them, and it also gives a bit about what to look for in a contract, how a contract is structured, how to actually talk to a sales agent using practical advice. And it's actually used as a textbook at about 10 film schools. And I think it's recommended reading. I think it's recommended, not required in most of those, but still. And if you're a film school teacher listening to this, we also run a film school contest where we give you a prompt to give your students, and if they enter, at least one person in each school gets the entire Producer Foundry workshop list, like free downloads of all of them. So,
oh, fantastic!
Very nice.
But yeah, no. So the book is, as of last checking, which was a couple weeks ago, it is still the only book specifically on film markets. Book to really dive deep into the subject matter. And it also features advice from 8 sales agents, distributors, and film financiers. So
very cool.
Yeah. And I think, and it's also, and if you're not the type for reading books, or you worry about getting through them, there's also an audiobook.
Which is great, because it's like, then you could also have it in, it's like, I love the feel of the actual like an actual book. But then sometimes when I'm on the road, I'm like, I still want to continue reading that book, so I'll pop in, I'll actually do both.
Cool. Yeah, no, and if you sign up for an Audible trial through my site, it's also free. So that's a thing. But yeah.
I have trouble with the audiobooks because it's hard to find them on a cassette tape anymore.
Can't help you there. But
Yeah, it's like definitely they do that. And now, also, you were saying though that you also have some future projects on the rise that you can give us a little hint about. Can you tell us about some of those?
Yeah, I believe there's. Keep your eyes on The Cutlass.
Mm-hmm.
That's a film I represented and I'm an EP on. We're gearing up for a Caribbean theatrical right now, and we may, I can't say for certain, but we may do a limited US as well. And we're also talking to various distributors about it. So there's that, and if we're talking about film projects, that's the biggest one. We already talked about PrdouctionNext. And
I can't wait to hear when it's launched and tell us all about it too.
But the other thing is the State of the Film Industry report, which you can view on the PrdouctionNext blog, which is which part 1 launched yesterday, and they'll be releasing weekly. It's a total of 7 parts. Part 1 was key metrics of the film industry in an overview. Through loosely what it is, but as a reminder, it's the total number of filmmakers, total projects made, and that's separated by feature films, shorts, corporate videos, web video, television, as well as the estimated budget spent on each of them. And I can say that our estimates are that the independent film industry, only independent and only in the US, is right around 5.3 billion. So there's a pretty big slice of that.
Wow.
Pretty big slice of that is corporate. But you can see the whole report on PrdouctionNext.com/blog. Next week, we're going to be diving into the economics of filmmakers and seeing if they really are as broke as we say we are.
Yes, we really are.
And data may or may not confirm that.
Yes.
And then we also have the one on the changing roles of gender in the film industry, one on whether film school actually helps, and deep data dives on all of these. And then that's 4 of them. I am blanking on what part 5 was, even though I was working on it today. But it's, there's also dives into technology in the film industry, what makes for success in the film industry, and the one that I was working on today, which I don't remember, the relationships of filmmakers, as in romantic relationships, and how they compare to the national average, and what that is a role in success as a filmmaker. The answers may surprise you. But
it does sound interesting.
So that's an outline of all 7 parts, and they'll be being released once and every Thursday we'll be dropping them on the PrdouctionNext blog. So
very cool. And also, you also are podcasting still, or not so much?
Not at the moment. I'm talking about starting a new one with who used to be our podcast editor and also edited my audiobooks and is also going to be the best man at my upcoming wedding. But so we are. Thank you, and we are going to be. But we're talking about one. I don't know if we're going to get it done or not, but we'd like to. It would still be focusing on the business of the film industry as we did before, and with some pretty good guests who already have said they want to come on. It would be a bit of a snarkier tone, though. That's when we talk.
Nice. Oh yes, because it's like I can see the stiff upper lip just happening.
So, do you have any words of wisdom, pearls, and all that stuff that you would like to impart on our listening audience about the filmmaking and things?
This is less filmmaking, but more a rule for life. And it's from The Art of War. But we kind of touched on it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest thing that will help you is to know your position. I'm going to paraphrase that quote, which is, if you know your position, but not if you know your enemy's position, but not your own, you will, for every battle you win, you will succumb to one. If you know neither, you will lose every battle. However, if you know both, result of any battle. I kind of butchered that, but I think the essence is there. If you have to know what you're asking for and know what you touched on this a little bit, knowing this one piece of advice, everything you do.
Okay.
Very cool.
Awesome.
The Art of War really could almost be retitled The Art of Life, because everything
it really could
it alludes to in his writings really could be applied to everyday life.
Yeah, you're completely right, and I do, but I try at least.
Yes. And
so yeah.
So Ben, also, how do we get you in social media?
The Twitter is a really good place. I'm just at the Guerrilla Rep.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also find me on Facebook. The page I'm most active with as of this recording is Producer Foundry.
Yes.
And that's facebook.com/Producer Foundry.
Mm-hmm.
And social media, but it is a somewhat of a way to stay in touch with me. I offer a free film market resource package through my website, which is www.afm. Nope, that's not it. www.theguerrillarep.com/resources. And if you have to sign up for my mailing list, but I don't blast it too often, and you get a lot of resources, and you stay up to date on anything important that's going on with me. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
As well as also, we should be looking for you as well on PrdouctionNext.
Yes, you can definitely look at me up at PrdouctionNext. That is just that's just www.PrdouctionNext.com. There is a link to apply, and when you get the application in your email, there is a "How did you hear about us?" field. If you say that that's through the Movietime podcast, I will let our screeners know to keep an eye out and move them up in the queue. So
fantastic.
Great.
And
cool.
Oh, you're welcome. And also, Olaf, how do they get you in social media, or stalk you in social media, I should say?
Yes. Well, you can stalk me on both Facebook and Twitter at Olaf Barbosa, but just don't stalk too close, because I do get nervous and I do have an itchy trigger finger.
And Arpo, how do they get you in social media?
Well, you can get me at Facebook, of course, if you want to be social. By the way, I want to make a plug about something I'm doing on Facebook real quick. May I please?
Yes.
If you do go to my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Richard.Pochard, and that's P like Paul, O, S like Sam, Hard, and I'm sure that Grayson will be putting it all over the place. I have posted there a story about human trafficking. There were like a half a dozen busts in Missouri. Now, you don't think of Missouri and human trafficking, but it just goes to show you how widespread this is. And the thing is, this is what happens when we stop caring. So start caring, people. There's things you can do. Don't shake your head, look the other way, report it. It's the only way to stop human trafficking in our lifetime. And there is a donate button on there for the From the Heart Productions Foundation. And it's partially to help with a film called What Did She Say, which is about human trafficking. But a portion of the proceeds will also go to about a half a dozen human trafficking organizations that are fighting the good fight. So please go on there, donate. I'm not asking for thousands of dollars, but if you got an extra 20, an extra 10, an extra buck, every little bit helps in the fight.
And you can get me also through Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Wikipedia. Basically, as I always say, that if with 4 pages of footprint on the internet, if you cannot find me, you're just not stalking me hard enough. So, and with that, thank you so much, Ben. It's been an amazing time with you. And please say that you're coming back to us again.
I would be happy to come back. Thank you for having me.
No, and thank you for being here. We have learned a lot of incredible information, and definitely we'll check out the whole things with Audible, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
And the websites as well. And it's keep up to date with them. I look forward to seeing part 2 now that I've read part 1.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care. And
Thanks for listening.
And we'll see y'all on Wednesday.
Bye now.